start off, we would just like to clarify that our English name is the Citizens Press Conference. We seek your understanding on any inconvenience or confusion caused. We would also like to thank Radical Hong Kong, a local media, for supporting sign language services used in our press conference today as well as the one last time. 61 days into the movement, Hong Kong has witnessed the resilience and unity that defines Hong Kongers despite the flagrant abuse of authority perpetrated by the Hong Kong police force. On the 6th of August, Mr. Keith Fong, president of the Hong Kong Baptist University Students' Union, was hounded by 5 officers in plain clothes and arrested on the alleged possession of offensive weapons, when in fact he was merely purchasing laser pointers, frequently used by astronomy hobbyists for stargazing purposes. Upon his arrest, hundreds of concerned citizens immediately rushed to Sham Shui Po police station to voice their support for Fong, but were met with violent and stubborn reactions from the police, who indiscriminately attacked those present with tear gas. These concerned citizens and Sham Shui Po residents all fell prey. Many of them were injured. In 2 separate attempts to explain themselves, the police have showcased their so-called evidence through what was intended to be a scientific demonstration. Since the arrest is now subject to ongoing legal proceedings, it begs the question of whether such a demonstration has already tainted the judicial process in an obstruction of justice. As a society that claims to be underpinned by the rule of law, it goes without saying that members of law enforcement are expected to respect the judicial process. Moreover, the so-called demonstration itself was an artificial setup from which no valuable conclusions can be deduced. During the demonstration, the laser pointer was aimed at close range onto a single point on ink-blotted newspaper. In reality, no protester has pointed a laser at close range at a police officer who is covered in ink. Last night, Hong Kongers gathered around the Space Museum to use laser pointers. No one was hurt, nor were there any fires. It is evident that the police demonstration is an exaggerated showcase aimed at justifying their repeated and false characterization of laser pointers as laser guns. The police has also evaded the question of what constitutes possession of offensive weapons, a question raised by many journalists. We fear that Hong Kongers will live under the reign of white terror and the constant fear that they will be entrapped at any time. Amidst this absurdity, we can see how the police has yet again wasted government resources in another attempt to legitimize their abuses of authority, acts of excessive force, and distortions of the truth. However, we greatly appreciate the Hong Kong Police Force's laudable attempt at pursuing the scientific method. Thus, we urge the police to also demonstrate the firing of sponge bullets, beanbag bullets, and rubber bullets within a 5-meter range, or the exposure to expired tear gas in order to support their claim that their arsenal of weapons is indeed non-lethal. Refusing to do so would simply be inconsistent with the Hong Kong Police Force's insistence on the public's right to know. In light of the many questionable acts perpetrated by the police, we hold today's civilians press conference with the theme, Rule of Lights and Bullets in Hong Kong, Police Abuse of Authority and the Tampering of the Rule of Law. We hereby make the following 3 points. Point 1. Violence at will in violation of civilians' rights. Since June, the police's use of excessive force has only worsened. On the 5th of August, during the citywide general strike and assemblies across 7 districts, the police ignored their own letters of no objection in perpetrating multiple acts of violence, tear gas, and bullets galore, at least 800 rounds of poisonous tear gas and countless bullets were fired, rendering the day's worth of firepower a gross match to the total in the past 2 months. While the police alleged that their use of force was only to prevent violent acts, in reality, they had forcefully suppressed not only participants of peaceful assemblies, but also passersby, terrifying young children who broke down crying. In light of such flagrant use of excessive force, we cannot help but wonder, if this is minimal force, what more can we expect from the police? During the police roundup of assembly participants in Tin Shui Wai on 4th of August, male officers dragged away a young female protesters whose undergarments became fully exposed in altercation. This has been widely condemned as an assault on female dignity. Similar abuses of authority and acts of excessive force are all too many. Findings of civilian investigations now available have detailed the degree to which such instances have occurred. Furthermore, the Hong Kong police force appears to have devised a new disturbing tactic, lights out. During the police action to clear protesters from Wong Tai Sin on 5th of August, witnesses reported that at around 8 p.m., street lights near Wong Tai Sin Discipline Services quarters were turned off. Local residents at the scene expressed grave concerns that this highly resembles the clearance tactics employed during the June 4th incident at Tiananmen Square, which infamously caused numerous casualties. About 10 minutes later, the police started to clear the scenes as hundreds of people were still retreating. The blackout led to chaos as panicked participants ran in fear and darkness. Low visibility resulted from the charging of the Special Tactics Unit and their firing of tear gas, almost triggering a stampede while the crowd continued to retreat, and impeded the ability of reporters to clearly report on the incident. The police again deployed similar dispersing tactics in the operations in Sham Shui Po. Such a tactic reinforces the view that the Hong Kong police itself understands that its own actions cannot see the light of day. We hereby stress that the continuation of such cowardly attempts at spreading fear and suppressing the freedom of press will eventually backfire on the government itself. The ultimate victim of these tactics will be the police force's already crumbling public image as an ill-disciplined and unprofessional group of people who happen to be armed with weapons. Point 2. Double standards and distortions of the truth. During the arrest of Mr. Keith Fong in Sham Shui Po on the 6th of August, the police claimed that while the objects themselves are not weapons, they can be interpreted as weapons as long as there is intent to harm, all while exaggerating and falsely characterizing laser pointers as laser guns. It was under this pretense and mischaracterization that they placed Fong under arrest. By stark contrast, during the brazen act of terrorism on 21st of July in Yuen Long, lead pipes and wooden sticks wielded by mobs in white shirt must have either been not effective enough to constitute offensive weapons or just outright invisible to the police. Yao Nai Kang, assistant commander of the Yuen Long district, went so far as proclaiming that police officers did not see them carrying any offensive weapons. The police were even seen mingling with the mobsters in apparent glee. How exactly these double standards or the police's manifest collusion with triads reflect the police's duty as civil servants to be politically neutral remains to be explained by the Hong Kong police force. Point 3. Abuse of authority at will to spread white terror. Since June, police have been carrying out mass arrests of participants in the movement, including not just protesters, but practically anyone who were present at the scene. Local residents, passerbys, journalists, elected district council members, social workers, and even first aiders. On Tuesday night, elected district council member of Shanton District, Mr. Wong Hock Lai, was arrested on the spot for participating in a riot and assaulting a police officer. Since these allegations were clearly unfounded, the police later had to demote his charge to the lesser unlawful assembly offense instead. The police's arbitrary handling of this and many other arrests has now come to constitute the norm. The police often take advantage of the 48-hour custody period and resort to all sorts of verbal abuse against detainees, including threats and intimidation, to hang a sword over the heads of all Hong Kong citizens who merely wish to exercise the freedom of expression that is guaranteed under both domestic and international law. When protesters are faced with internal disagreements, they have quickly learned to seek self-reflection and improve through open discussion on multiple platforms. This is a shining example of mutual cooperation and direct democracy in action. Government officials and supposedly professionally trained members of the police would do well to take a leaf from this book. In relation to their trigger-happy attitude in abusing lethal weapons and placing citizens in great danger, their complete lack of remorse does not at all mean that such remorse is not due. Far from it. Had the Hong Kong police force attempt at logic, science, and fact-finding during their laser demonstration been similarly implemented to investigate their own shortcomings, Hong Kong's situation today would look much different to how it does now. The basic responsibility to protect Hong Kong citizens falls squarely on the police. Their continuing refusal to take on this responsibility reflects damningly on its already fragile image. Hong Kongers will not give up now, nor give in until the 5 demands are fulfilled and justice is served. Upcoming events include the silent assemblies to be held at the Hong Kong International Airport on the 9th, 10th, and 11th of August, the Out of the Lenin Wall March in Taipo, Liberate Wong Tai Sin March, and For the Future of Our Children March on the 10th of August, as well as the march in Eastern District and Sham Shui Po on the 11th of August. The Hong Kong government's attempt to achieve the impossible by trying to exhaust the inexhaustible will not prevail. Their failure to properly address the 5 demands, to take immediate action to bridge societal divides, and to salvage the damaged reputation of the police force will only serve to add fuel to the already raging fire. We demand to be released from this reign of white terror and look forward to returning to a peaceful and normal life.
ABC Australia, Paolo Wang, I'm actually just following up on what you just said, because there is no central decision making. It's a decentralized movement. And you've been doing an amazing job at coming up with strategy and decision making through whatever mechanisms. So we would like to know, in the eventual case that there is an opportunity for negotiation or the government actually responds to certain demands, how would the decisions to accept or reject the government's proposal would be made? It's a technical question.
Well, to be honest, I can't tell you if there's a decision to be made, but I think a good indicator would be when one day you realize the demonstrations have less people coming out, or even so there are less demonstration activities. Then you would know the government's doing the right thing. That's what I'd say.
From RTH English News, I'm just going to quote something that the executive councillor said this morning. Ed Hawking said, somebody must be masterminding the ongoing protests because young people taking part are not smart enough to come up with some of your tactics. Regina, if you guys are so good with Telegram and airdrop and stuff, and so masterminding, what do you have to say to that?
Well, okay, so number one would definitely be, I believe Hong Kong as a financial center is again growing. So I do find it, as a citizen myself, astonishing that the government or those lawmakers don't actually have a very good understanding of what the internet really is. So that's that. And on the other hand, Mr. Yip has commented that protesters are not smart enough to think of these kind of methods to voice out against the government. So on one hand, it's a little saddening to think that the government doesn't believe in its citizens because we're somehow not smart enough. That's one thing. And the other thing is, I would actually, as a citizen myself, think instead of blocking out the messages we're trying to send and delegitimizing them, the government should actually spend more energy in understanding what we're saying. Why is this still happening? So I think they're putting their resources in the wrong basket.
後排我記得佢有問題嘅。This is from the Financial Times. So this is a citizens' press conference. So I suppose you can have every citizen's voices. And someone who is holding an opposite stance with you, that he or she is also a Hong Kong citizen, come up to you requesting for opportunity to voice out like the positive today. How would you deal with the opposite stances of the citizens?
Well, the first thing is definitely to look at what kind of theme we're actually undergoing today. For example, this time we're talking about police brutality. And so, depending on that, we would gather the kind of people who want to speak out. So that's number one. Number two, if there's someone who is of the opposite stance, I think it's important to understand what they're trying to voice out, because a lot of people who are having so-called opposite stance can be represented by the government's speech. And so the idea of our whole civilians press conference is to allow normal citizens who do not have a means to represent themselves to speak out. So depending on these kind of issues, I believe the people who are in charge of this part would make a good decision. However, again, it's important to remember we don't have a core team or like a constant group of people who works on this. So the team is fluid. So on that, that's the only thing I can say about the whole issue. Thank you.
Chairman Chan from Hong Kong Bilingual News. Do you personally think that this movement is in fact a revolution per se? Because as you have said, people from all walks of life, of all ages, have joined in the resistance. And also the purpose, the aim of this movement has gone beyond the withdrawal of extradition bill to cover also universal suffrage and in fact decolonization from China, or freedom from China colonization. And many young activists are now fearless of death, even death if they risk bullets and tear gas and whatever. And of course one of the most common slogans is time revolution and free Hong Kong. What's your take on this?
So I think I should first respond to the whole slogan thing. For me personally, as a citizen, individual citizen, when I say free Hong Kong, what I really mean is freedom Hong Kong. Because let us enjoy our rights of speech, our rights to voice out against the government. That's what I mean by it. But obviously, different people have different interpretation of what a slogan means, and their idea and spirit behind such slogan is different. So I can't speak for everyone. That's number one. And do I think this is a revolution? Personally, I think it is a very new time because in the past, I would personally think it's a revolution in a way because more people are aware and actually want to contribute to the society in terms of our societal landscape. So it's a revolution in a way because what the government and police is doing now, I think it's really one of a kind, not in a good way. And so I wouldn't say it's an active sort of pursuit anymore, but it's sort of a reaction we get from the government's actions. If you push us with that kind of strength, we have to fight back. It's our personal safety. That's my take on it.
最後一條確認。